Hello my wonderful, beautiful friends, guys. Welcome back to our /MaliciousCompliance, where people follow exact orders to spite someone. And in today's episode, we're dealing with Karen customers and bad bosses, guys. And one OP tells a story about obeying his nasty boss's exact orders, and he humiliates the guy so hard, the guy quits. I hope you enjoy the stories. Hit subscribe if you're not subscribed, and as always, you can send or link your post to this email right here. Let's dive in. Now, this story isn't really malicious as it is compliant, but I think it'll give the listeners a laugh. This was over 15 years ago, when digital SLR cameras were first becoming somewhat affordable to anyone who wasn't either wealthy or a professional photographer. I was in high school and I'd been a budding photographer for years, and I was working in a small retail photo supply shop. One Saturday, I had a customer who appeared to be in his early 60s come in, and the guy spent over an hour demoing every camera we sold. I honestly looked forward to these customers because it made time go faster, and I enjoyed talking shop with people. Eventually, the guy settles on what we both thought would suit his needs, and I rang him up. A few nights later, he comes back. I've been given a heads up by the store's owner that this guy's called ahead, and he's super pissed. When the customer arrives, he immediately gets in my face. The guy's angry and accuses me of selling him a camera that's either broken or simply not good enough for what he wants to use it for. The guy wants to use it for taking pictures of his grandkids, who, like most tiny kids, are not always sitting perfectly still. The guy says the camera's too slow and it takes the picture after the kid's already done something and every photo's blurry, etc. I take him at his word as I have no reason not to, so I examine the camera and change some settings, snapping a few pictures as I go. I genuinely can't find anything wrong with the camera at all. So as gently as I can, I try to tell this red-faced man that it might be a combination of using the wrong settings on the camera for what he's trying to photograph and maybe a bit too slow of reflexes that'll develop with practice. Keep in mind that I'm young and terrified of losing my job, so believe me when I say that I'm as delicate as I can be with the whole situation. But apparently, that was the wrong answer. The guy's solution was telling me, well, okay then, Mr. Hotshot, let's see you make this work. I'm gonna wave my arms back and forth over my head, and I want you to take pictures when they're straight up. He insists that this will prove the camera's too slow, and it can't take a sharp picture. He then hands me the camera and starts doing his best, wave your hands in the air like you just don't care, right in the store, and I snap some pictures. I then hand the camera back and let him review the photos, each one showing the exact moment he wanted me to photograph, perfectly sharp and in focus. The guy didn't say another word. He just huffed, hastily shoved everything back into his camera bag, and stormed off. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm sorry, sir, I'm just doing what you asked me to. Yeah, there is nothing more satisfying than putting a raging customer in their place, especially when they're up in your face and being aggressive about things. But at least the guy conceded though, and he didn't cause more of a scene. Although, would it have killed him to apologize to OP before storming out? And if you thought that was satisfying, this person comments their similar story. At the time, I worked in a copy center of a popular office supply store. One evening, a 30-something man comes in with his Super Bowl tickets, and he wanted them laminated to preserve them. Now, it's important to note that lamination does not preserve items long-term. It yellows and it can't be removed from the item. It also makes it difficult to determine if the item's fake, and eventually, it falls apart and peels. Secondly, and more importantly, lamination uses heat, so it turns heat-printed items like Super Bowl tickets solid black, which eventually fades completely. It would ruin the tickets in 20 seconds. I told him this, and the guy refused. He insisted. I refuse again, which was 100% allowed when it came to the lamination machine, as it destroys customers' original media. That's when the guy ups it and he starts calling me names, so I continue to refuse. He then calls for a manager over. Now this manager had zero patience for any shenanigans at all. He told the customer no. The customer then carries on the tantrum, calling all of us useless F-words. That's when I type up a basic release form, as I knew what was coming. It stated that lamination would destroy the tickets, had everything about the tickets, and was relatively ironclad, coming from somebody who makes minimum wage. The manager finally says fine, we would laminate them. I hand him the release, and he insisted the customer sign it. The guy signs it and then screams at me to laminate the tickets. I again refuse, knowing that I could still be disciplined for ruining the originals. I always had the backing of management to refuse to ruin things. So the manager laminates the tickets. Immediately, it turns the tickets black, and the customer lost his mind. The guy starts smashing everything in sight, and the manager retreats to his locked office to call the cops. The cops show up, and they hauled off the customer. The customer claimed the tickets were worth over $1,000 each, but not anymore. Can't say he didn't deserve that, right? And this is why you should always listen to employees and not think you know more than a person who does that job every single day. But hey, consider those destroyed Super Bowl tickets the a-hole tax he had to pay for being such a nasty customer. So this happened about 12 months ago. I'm a nurse and I work in a relatively specialized field. Due to financial difficulties, I had taken on a number of additional jobs in the previous years, and I had settled on one that was particularly good for me. I was employed casually in a smaller 6-bedded unit in a private hospital. Based on the nature of my specialty, this particular area required 2 nurses in attendance at all times. 2 nurses to 6 patients is a dream ratio, and virtually unheard of in private health. To combat this, most hospitals that have beds for this particular specialty area combine them with another ward so they can staff us down and allow the regular nurses to cover us. However, for some reason, this hospital had located the beds completely separate to any other unit. This meant they had no choice to safely staff us, but to roster 2 nurses on at all times, and our manager stood her ground and refused to budge on that requirement. Because I was casually employed, there was always the possibility that my hours could be cut or shifts could be canceled at any time. However, because they need both nurses present at all times, they couldn't do that. Even if we had no patients in this particular specialty area, they had to keep 2 nurses available, just in case we needed to admit. If we had no patients at all, some nurses would go on call. But because I relied on public transport to get to and from work, my manager understood that I can't go on call, because I couldn't return to the workplace in a reasonable time. Instead, I would be sent to help out in other areas. Now, our manager had, in addition to her other duties, become the project lead on a large expansion within our facility, and she had performed very well in the role. So well, in fact, that when another facility under the same company was expanding, she was headhunted to lead their expansion project as well. And as a result, we would be given a new acting manager. To our dismay, we discovered that the acting manager was from a ward, where it was well known that the staff couldn't stand her. Sure enough, within days, she began doing things like canceling our staff and moving her surplus staff into our area, even though they lacked the appropriate training and experience to work in our area. It all came to a head one morning, when after 2 hours of a 12-hour shift, we discharged our last patient. I was literally on the phone finalizing the patient discharge when our acting manager calls the other nurse on shift and instructed both of us to clock out immediately and go on call. Confused, I ring her back and I say, "Hey, acting manager, it's me. I just got a message saying that you want us to clock out and go home. You may not be aware, although our previous manager was, but I take public transport to and from work. I can't be on call." The acting manager says, "That doesn't matter. You have no patients, and I can't pay for you to both be on the ward doing nothing. And there's no other areas that require help today. I need you to clock off and go home." I ask, "Are you sure?" We're halfway through checking the emergency cart, and there's a massive pile of follow-up calls to make, and we haven't even stripped the patient room yet. She says, "That doesn't matter. Bring me your phone and keys and clock out." That's when I ask, "What are you gonna do if there's an admission? It'll take me over an hour to get back." She says, "Well, I'll just sit here until you get back. Go clock out." At this point, I was fuming. I then marched the phone and keys to our acting manager, and I hand them over. As I did so, she said, "You can't be paid to sit and make phone calls. This has to be done when you have patients." I reply, "We're busy with the patients when we have patients. Besides, it's only past 9 a.m. and most of the follow-up calls are to families with kids who are busy doing school runs. I wouldn't answer a call from an unknown number before 9 a.m. I then handed the keys over and clocked off and began the journey home. I hadn't even reached home before I got a message from my other workplace, asking for a nurse for the night shift and offering overtime payment. Now, I was booked for a day shift at my second job the next day, and I knew we had no theater cases booked, which meant the likelihood of that shift being canceled was also high. I couldn't afford to sit home waiting for work if we didn't have patients, but just to be sure, I give the union a quick call, and they managed to illuminate something wonderful. As a casual employee, I was not entitled to be on call at all. That meant not only could they not ask me to be on call, I wasn't entitled to the measly $26 allowance that permanent employees received. As soon as I clocked out, my shift ended. So armed with that knowledge, I call my acting manager and I inform her that I've been offered paying work that night, and as a consequence, I would need to cancel my shift the following day. She was quite hostile, asking, "Do you normally cancel work here to work elsewhere?" I replied, "I normally don't have my shifts canceled at all, but I'm not a charity and I can't just sit at home unpaid when I could be paid to work elsewhere. I have a family to support." After this call, I sent a quick email to my usual manager, outlining the acting manager's request and why I left the ward disorganized and had a stack of work not done, and then went to bed to have a nap. I was awoken at approximately 4:15 in the afternoon by my spouse, looking confused. My acting manager had called and left a message with her that we were admitting a patient and she required me back at work. I was bemused. The acting manager shouldn't have even been there at that time of the afternoon and clearly lacked the stones to talk to me directly. No matter though, I call the hospital supervisor. I say, "Hi, it's me. I just got a message that I'm a bit confused about. Apparently, there's a patient and you want me to come in to work a shift." Supervisor says, "That's right. We're admitting to your area. We need you back in." I say, "You know my shift was canceled, right?" The supervisor says, "The acting manager told me you're on call." I respond, "Well, I can't be on call because I'm a casual employee. My shift was canceled. Besides, by the time I've gotten dressed, gotten packed, got on my bike, ridden half an hour to my nearest train station, caught the train, then walked the rest of the way, and then showered and changed, it'll be about 6:30. My shift's meant to end at 7:30. I don't think I'm gonna be much help to you." I then hear the sound of the phone being covered and a muffled voice, before shouting and ranting began in the background. It was my acting manager, clearly still there and clutching her pearls, about how unreasonable it was that it would take me 2 hours to return to work. As the ranting continued, I spoke on the phone again. I say, "Supervisor, I know you have acting manager shouting at you in the background, but right now, I'm the person you need to be listening to because I called you." The acting manager is well aware of how long it takes me to return to work because I told her this morning. She knew when she asked me to clock off that I wouldn't be returning to work. I'm sorry that she gave you the impression that I could be on call, but I can't. Now, as I'm not able to assist you any further and I'm not on the clock, I'll be ending this conversation. I then put the phone down. I did get a couple of confused texts about why I wasn't working the next day, and what the heck had happened on the ward from the night shift when they arrived. I had a week off after that. Unfortunately, this particular manager appears to be Teflon coated, but I've never had a shift canceled since. So I work in security and I have been for years. A common practice is to complete a report of what happened during your time. I specifically work patrols. Basically, you go from location to location checking on each site. After each site, you write down what you did at the location. I have 40 sites to watch over every night. For this reason, things tend to get very copy-paste. Most locations require the same thing. Check the exterior, checking stairs, checking damage, you get the point. That said, I got a new manager who's disconnected with how patrols work. The guy wants us to make unique entries into every single log. And when I mean unique, I mean none can be close to similar. So if I state that I patrolled the exterior of a building, I can't use that phrase for any other log. And you can see how that could cause me a lot of problems, and that's a massive time waster. So about a week of being borderline harassed and then threatened to make each log 100% unique or else, I decide to go on malicious compliance mode. We have so much to look after that we have thick binders, giving detailed information for each site, and what's required of you, called site orders. So every time I'd complete a site, I would just copy-paste all the information into the log. Each log has a small window that you could put 50 words into, before it becomes overwhelming to read. Each log I posted had no less than 500 words, directly from the site orders. After my first day of doing this, I expected to walk in and get yelled at. However, nothing happened. I got no emails, no talking to, zero reaction. That note aside, I still hear that the other security officers are still getting chewed out. It's at that point I decided to see how long I can get away with this. 2 months later, and still no one says anything, not a word. We have quarterly meetings to talk about accidents and how the patrol group's doing, what's going wrong and what's good. Cue the manager. The first thing he brings up is the logs and how almost everyone's failing such simple instructions, how we should all know better. The guy says to everyone, "You're not kids. I shouldn't be holding your hands. The only adult in here besides me is OP." That's when I look up at him and his smile was almost disturbing. He then shows a log I wrote up. The guy then begins to talk how everyone should be like me, how no one deserved to work here but me, and the looks I was getting from everyone was brutal. The guy talked about me for 20 minutes, constantly using my name, and he would have kept going, but I interrupted him. I asked why he called me out and how inappropriate it was for him to do so. He then looked at me and said, "Only children interrupt someone when they're talking." That's when I told him that the guy has a strange obsession with kids and he needs to get help. The room was dead silent for a solid 30 seconds as we made direct eye contact. I then turned to the group, telling them that I've been copy-pasting my report the last 2 months. I told them that I just copy-pasted the site orders over and over again. The manager's face starts getting real red. He, after all, wanted us to make unique logs. The guy starts to scramble a bit as he pulled up other logs of mine, only to show that everything I said was true. After that, the whole group jumped on him. Many had been screamed at for the exact same thing I'd been doing. It was brutal. I don't think I've ever seen so many people yell at one person at the same time. The manager just slides into his office chair looking at the computer. It was about 15 minutes of utter verbal shouting from everyone. The guy quit a week later. Yeah, I'm not surprised the guy quit, like being called out after his little speech and having everyone scream at him for 15 minutes straight. I think the guy made the right choice because no one's taking him seriously after that. And here's a pro tip. If you're gonna make such a big deal out of something, it would be a good idea to make sure you're not making a fool of yourself. Also, it's kind of ironic that the guy had this huge obsession about people taking shortcuts or phoning it in, and that's the very thing that led to his demise. Ain't that something? So this happened a long time ago when I was a dishwasher for a local pizza joint. Not the most respectable of jobs, but hey, money's money. I'm a damn good worker and I show up 10 minutes early every day. I never take off and I get crap done. I can put up with a lot of nonsense, but this place was getting to me. It was one thing after another. Most importantly, the manager was the most snarky, condescending man I've ever met. This is important to the story. A thing about me is I have IBS issues, but it's never a problem because I use the bathroom before work. On this day, I needed to use the restroom during work hours, which I don't usually do. I was in there for about 10 minutes tops. The place was a ghost town. There wasn't even a fork to wash. I would literally stand there waiting for something to be used so I can clean it. So that said, I come out of the bathroom and I was informed that I need to clock out the next time I needed to use it. I'm thinking, okay, fine. I just laughed it off and I said I would comply. I just wanted to continue my shift and mind my own business. But here's the fun part. The manager and the assistant manager decided it would be a fun game to make fun of me. They're adults, mind you, hence the snarky condescending part. They were talking so loudly behind my back, intentionally so I could hear them, and they said something along the lines of, yeah, OP thinks it's funny that I told them to clock out when they have to use the restroom. So I turn from what I'm doing, literally standing there waiting for dirty dishes, and I look at them in disbelief. Two grown men thought it would be funny to poke fun at the dishwasher. They then look at me and say, "Isn't it funny, OP?" To which I say, I don't find this funny at all. I then turn back to my incredibly busy post. The manager then proceeds to gleefully sing out, "Hey, I'm clocking out to use the restroom. I just want to let everyone know." This was typical for this guy. And that's my last straw. Right as it's getting busy during dinner, where I would usually be swamped with dishes, I go to the manager and I say, "Hey, I just want to let you know that I'm clocking out to use the bathroom." The guy was busy, so he just gave me the look of, "Okay, you can go potty now." And that's when I said I'd be returning home to use the toilet at my house, and that it shouldn't be a problem since I was off the clock. The guy starts to argue, and like that, I just left. It's not my problem since I was off the clock. I never did come back. F that guy. Yeah, I'm pretty sure what the boss was getting OP to do is a huge no-no. Like, I'm not gonna pretend I know labor laws really well or anything, but I'm pretty sure you have the right as an employee to use the potty on company time. Like, asking an employee to clock out to use the bathroom, I've never heard of that in my entire life. But yeah, I'm glad OP didn't take their crap, no pun intended, and he left the bosses that night and didn't look back because a boss like that can go F themselves. During my time of working at the grocery store, I went through multiple managers. Some were good and I got along with them, and others not so much. The manager of this story wasn't the worst I've had, but I can definitely say she was the most annoying to deal with. She was one of those types that went, "I don't know your duties all that well, but I will micromanage you and have you do things my way." She would get angry if we didn't do things her way, even if her way wasn't the most efficient. That said, around the time she started as manager, there was a new store policy being implemented about cleaning the small public bathroom in the back of the store every 2 hours. And honestly, I was not against that, as the public bathroom was only a single toilet and a sink. A quick mop and a spray wouldn't take too long anyway. Unfortunately, that's when my manager's micromanaging came into play, even here. Basically, if the place wasn't clean enough to eat off of, it wasn't clean, according to her. And yes, somehow, she expected that level of cleanliness every 2 hours, while all of us are busy with our own work. It didn't help that occasionally there were doodles and other such stuff on walls that were hard to get out of, if not impossible with normal cleaning supplies. I even remember one time some guy used spray paint to paint the F word in there. Anyway, one day, it's my turn to clean the bathroom. At the time, it was considerably busy due to the lack of cashiers that day. As I was often used as a backup cashier at that point, I didn't have the time to do such a deep clean like my manager wanted. A bit later, my manager apparently must have saw the bathroom herself, and she decides to pull me away to berate me. The following's an abridged version of what she said. The manager says to me, "Why didn't you clean the bathroom? You were supposed to earlier." I tell her I did clean the bathroom. I didn't have time to deep clean everything as I had to help some customers at the cash, and there's some things I can't clean in there anyway. The manager says, "No excuses. You're not a full-on cashier anyway. Now go back and clean it again. And do it right this time. I want the bathroom to be spotless, and don't you leave until you're done." And now it's finally time for the malicious compliance. As mentioned earlier, sometimes there were things on the walls that would not come out with the cleaning materials we had on hand, hence why we usually had a cleaning company do a deep cleaning at night. This naturally resulted in not being able to leave, as I had no way of cleaning these things myself. So I just did my best to clean what I could and then sat on the toilet doing stuff on my phone. I had nothing else to do after all, and nowhere I could go. Of course, I wasn't mean, so I did exit the bathroom when someone needed to use it, but I went back inside afterwards. All in all, I didn't do much the next 5 hours or so. I got paid for sitting around on my phone and occasionally cleaning. The fallout inside the bathroom, however, was much more eventful. It turns out that a bit after I was sentenced to being in my bathroom jail cell, one of the cashiers ends up clocking out for the day, and another cashier had called out sick. That left just one cashier and my manager to deal with the horde of customers waiting to check out. As expected, I was called over the loudspeaker multiple times to come help, from that manager of all people. But I'm like, you ordered me to stay in here, so I'm staying in here. I didn't respond to those calls. I end up leaving my prison a bit after 8 p.m., which was after she left for the night. During my next shift with her in charge, I got pulled into the office, and I was sat down with another manager, I suppose as a witness or something. Once again, below is the abridged version. Manager says, "Where were you that day? You didn't respond to any calls and nobody could find you. You must have left the store." I say, I was simply following orders. Your orders, I might add. She then says, "What are you talking about?" I say, "You told me I couldn't leave the bathroom until I made sure it was spotless." She then says, "Well, it shouldn't have taken you that long." To which I respond, "I did tell you that there was stuff I couldn't clean with the supplies on hand, but you insisted. You even said you'd fire me if I didn't do it." Well, that causes the unintended effect of getting her to lunge at me, and she started to full-on yell at me. This was enough for the other manager to step in and stop this. In the end, I was told that I could go back to my normal duties, and I didn't have to keep the bathroom that clean. Unfortunately, my micromanaging manager didn't seem to get much more than a slap on the wrist. And to be fair, it did make sense, as she didn't do much else besides yell at me in my face. But even then, I managed to have some fun before I left that job, by simply watching her frustrated face, knowing she couldn't micromanage me as much anymore. Guys, this malicious compliance was freaking hilarious. Like, just picturing OP sitting in the bathroom for hours despite a nasty boss was so good. That said, managers do need to be careful what they say to pissed off workers, because some of them will take it literally and make them pay, one way or another. And that, my friends, brings us to another end of r/malicious compliance. Guys, I hope you enjoyed today's stories. If you did, hit that thumbs up. And if you're not subscribed, consider subscribing so you don't miss these crazy stories. And if you missed the last episode on the channel, it's an r/entitled People episode, where psycho Karen mother-in-laws are crossing boundaries, breaking into homes, and the stories are wild. Guys, go check it out if you haven't. And myself and Stevie Boy will see you guys in the next one. We love you.